It was a chill that ran deeper than any winter night, a kind that bit through layers and seeped into your bones. That night, though, it wasn't the cold that kept me awake. It was her. Rachel, my wife of 12 years. From the beginning, ours had been the picture-perfect romance. We met in college, she with her dark, enchanting eyes and easy laughter, me with my ambition and drive. Together, we built a life, a business, and, at least I thought, a future. But that night, as I looked across the bed at her sleeping form, peaceful as though nothing was amiss, I felt an unease. Call it intuition, call it the sixth sense. But something had been off with her for weeks. It started with her late nights. First, they were innocent enough. She was staying later at the office, working on some major project that was supposedly close to her heart. I tried to be understanding, supportive even. But every time she'd slip through the door at midnight, smelling faintly of perfume that wasn't hers, I'd feel a knot tighten in my chest. She'd insist it was just work or stress, and I wanted to believe her. I needed to believe her. After all, we had built so much together. That was until the text messages. I first noticed them when we were sitting on the couch one evening, watching some mindless TV show. She'd smile down at her phone every so often, a secret smile I hadn't seen in years. "Just Sarah," she'd murmur when I asked. "She's going through a tough time, so we're texting." It sounded plausible enough, until I saw the look in her eyes, a spark that had dimmed years ago when our marriage became routine, like so many do. I pushed the suspicion down, but it nagged at me, digging deeper every time she glanced at that damn phone. Finally, the night came. I waited until she was asleep, breathing deeply beside me, and reached for her phone on the nightstand. My hands were shaking as I unlocked it, my heart pounding with a mix of fear and shame. But as I read the messages one by one, my blood ran cold. His name was Mark, and he was no random stranger. He was someone we both knew, someone who had been in our home, around our friends, our family. A friend, if you could call him that. The messages weren't just flirty, they were explicit. Intimate details, plans they'd made, even jokes about me. I could feel my face flush as I read through every line, every callous word exchanged between them. The rage started as a low simmer, but by the end it was roaring, threatening to rip me apart. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I made my plans. I didn't say anything to her the next morning. I wanted her to stew, to wonder why my demeanor had shifted, why my voice was icy, why I couldn't meet her eyes. But I didn't want to confront her yet, not until I had everything laid out perfectly. Over the next few days, I watched her. Not that she noticed, she was too wrapped up in her deceit. The text messages became my nightly routine, each one adding fuel to my burning anger. I saw where they planned to meet next, some dingy hotel on the edge of town, no doubt chosen for its ability to keep secrets. But they wouldn't keep this secret. On the night of their next rendezvous, I followed her. I knew I should have felt humiliation, but all I felt was raw, electric rage, fueling me with every step. As she entered that cheap, tacky hotel room, my heart twisted, but my resolve hardened. I counted down the minutes, letting them get comfortable, and then I went in. The scene that greeted me was every bit as sordid as I'd imagined. Rachel froze the second she saw me, her face going pale. Mark jumped up, eyes wide, stumbling over some pathetic excuse. But I wasn't there for his words. I lunged at him, my fist colliding with his face in a rush of satisfaction that nearly drowned out the pain. "You bastard!" I roared, landing another blow. Rachel screamed, but I barely heard her over the thud of my fist against his skin, the rush of blood roaring in my ears. He tried to hit back, but I was beyond reason, beyond restraint. He fell to the floor, clutching his mouth, gasping. "What were you thinking?" I snarled, my voice low. He looked up at me, but he had nothing to say. He'd been the type to worm his way in, feeding on our weak spots, taking advantage of the cracks. I turned to Rachel. She was still standing there, pale and shaking, wrapped in nothing but a bedsheet, her eyes wide. Why? I asked, my voice as cold as I felt. After everything we've built, why? She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Her eyes were brimming with guilt, but it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough, was it? I asked quietly. The life we built. You had to throw it all away for him? Her lips trembled and she choked out a few words, but they were nothing more than hollow excuses. The anger was gone now, replaced by something cold, something final. I took one last look at her, then turned my back, walking out of that room without another word. Behind me, she called my name, her voice laced with desperation. But I didn't stop. I left them both there in that dingy, miserable room. They could have each other for all I cared. After I walked out of that hotel room, a strange calm settled over me. It wasn't peace exactly, more like a numbness, the kind that follows after a storm, leaves everything shattered. I drove in silence, replaying the scene over and over in my mind. The looks on their faces, the desperation in her voice as she called out my name, her voice wavering, hollow with regret. I knew her cries weren't for me, not really. They were cries of a person who had finally realized the stakes of the game they'd been playing. When I got home, the house felt like a stranger to me. Every picture on the wall, every piece of furniture reminded me of her, of us. Of all those nights, I stayed up late working to build the business, thinking I was building it for us. The emptiness felt so heavy, so tangible, that I barely managed to make it to the couch before I collapsed. I didn't sleep. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, letting the silence settle around me like dust. The next few days, Rachel was nowhere to be seen. She hadn't come home after the hotel incident, and I didn't bother to reach out. I needed time to process, to decide my next steps. But on the third day, just as the sun dipped below the horizon, I heard the key turn in the door. She walked in cautiously as if testing the waters. Her face was pale, her eyes rimmed with dark circles, and she looked worn down, almost small. For the first time, I didn't feel any sympathy for her. She'd made her choice. Now, she would face the consequences. We stood there in the entryway, a heavy silence between us. She opened her mouth, her voice a cracked whisper. Daniel, can we talk? I gestured toward the living room, my face impassive. She followed, perching on the edge of the couch, as if it didn't belong to her anymore. Maybe it didn't. I leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, waiting. I made a mistake, she began, her voice trembling. I don't know what I was thinking. I was lost. I was stupid. I held up a hand, cutting her off. You weren't stupid, Rachel. You knew exactly what you were doing. Every text, every call, every rendezvous, I spat the word, the taste of it bitter. You weren't thinking about us. Just yourself. She flinched, as if the words had struck her. I know. I don't deserve forgiveness, Daniel, but I just want you to know I'm sorry. I love you. I laughed. A short, cold laugh that felt foreign in my own throat. Love me? Is that what you call love? Do you even understand what you've done? You've destroyed everything, Rachel. Everything I thought we had. A tear slipped down her cheek, but it only hardened my resolve. She reached for my hand, but I stepped back. The distance was unbearable for her. I could see it in her eyes, the desperate regret, the sudden understanding that she'd overplayed her hand. I let her wallow in that silence, savoring the power I hadn't felt in months, maybe years. Finally, she looked up at me, her eyes a storm of pleading. Daniel, please. I'll do anything to make it right. I swear to you. Just tell me what to do and I'll do it. I took a long, slow breath, then spoke in a voice as steady as I could manage. The only thing I want from you is to stay out of my way. I'm filing for divorce and you'll leave here with exactly what you brought in. I gave her one last look, letting the weight of my words sink in. Consider it mercy. If I wanted to, I could ruin you. Her face fell, her expression shattering as she realized just how cold the future looked without the life she'd taken for granted. She was a smart woman, Rachel. She knew what the stakes were now. As the weeks went by, I tried to build a new routine, a life without her shadow in it. The business, thankfully, kept me occupied, its demands giving me structure and purpose when I felt the emptiness creeping in. And people talked. Friends, family, even those who'd once sung Rachel's praises now whispered in sympathy, some in satisfaction. Then one night, just as I was starting to feel like I'd turned a corner, there was a knock at the door. I opened it, and there she was, looking fragile and beautiful, her eyes glistening with tears she made no attempt to hide. I almost closed the door, but something in her gaze held me there. "Daniel, please, just hear me out," she whispered, her voice barely audible. She held out a single piece of paper, a letter from her to me. Against my better judgment, I let her in. She handed me the letter, then turned to leave, her form a ghost in the moonlight that poured through the door. She didn't look back. I sat down and read it, feeling a strange, reluctant pull at the words she'd chosen so carefully. She wrote about her regrets, about the years she spent feeling isolated in our marriage, things she claimed she could never put into words before. I wanted to scoff, to dismiss it as excuses, but a small part of me, a part I wasn't proud of, felt the weight of her confession, the understanding that maybe, just maybe, neither of us had been perfect in all of this. But that was the trap of it, wasn't it? The tendency to look back, to cling to some broken ideal in the hope of salvaging it. And this time, I wasn't falling into it. I set the letter aside, closing the chapter on a marriage I knew I could never trust again. It's strange, looking back now, at how I thought that betrayal would break me. In the months that followed, I rebuilt my life brick by brick. It wasn't easy. The scars ran deep, and there were days when I questioned everything. But eventually, I realized that Rachel was part of my past, not my future. I kept the business, our house, everything that mattered. The part of me that still ached for justice felt satisfied in knowing that she would never have what we'd built together. They say betrayal changes a man, and I knew it was true. In the months after Rachel left, I became someone else entirely. My colleagues noticed it. My work ethic turned razor sharp, cold, efficient. My friends noticed it. Gone was the easygoing guy they once knew, replaced by a man who watched and waited, every interaction tainted by a calculated distance. But more than anything, she would notice it, and soon. I would make sure of that. Rachel's pitiful letter, her tear-streaked apologies, and her so-called regret were just empty gestures, I realized. In her mind, she thought she could play the part of the remorseful wife, hoping I'd cave, maybe even take her back, or at least let her off easy. But I had no intention of playing the fool she thought I was. I would give her exactly what she deserved, and not an ounce more. First, I went to work on the business, pulling every last thread she had woven into it. We had built it together, sure, but I was the one who had bled for it, sacrificed for it, stayed faithful to it. Rachel had no claim to it now, but I'd make sure it stayed that way. I hired a forensic accountant, a sly, sharp-eyed woman named Marie, who didn't ask questions and understood what I wanted. We found every last record that tied Rachel to the business, every invoice, every email she'd ever sent, every deal she'd been a part of. Slowly but surely, I erased her from the company, wiping her influence from every corner. And when it came time for the divorce proceedings, I was prepared. Rachel sat across from me in that sterile courtroom, her face pale and drawn as she realized I had all the leverage. She didn't expect me to fight so hard, or for my case to be so airtight. Her lawyer fumbled, blindsided by evidence I'd pulled, including the proof of her betrayal. Hotel receipts, text logs, damning details that painted her as the villain, the instigator, the one who had abandoned her commitments. In the end, she walked away with nothing but a paltry settlement, and I kept it all. The house, the business, and every last vestige of the life she'd thoughtlessly tossed aside. But it still wasn't enough, not for me. I wanted her to feel the depth of what she'd lost, to know she had nothing left. A few weeks later, I heard she'd moved into a dingy one-bedroom apartment in a seedy part of town, the kind of place she'd once scoffed at. She'd even had to sell her car. Apparently, her new life of freedom wasn't quite so glamorous now. But I wasn't done yet. The night I saw her at the bar was almost too perfect. It was the same bar we used to go to back when things were good. I could see her standing at the bar, sipping a cheap drink and forcing a smile as some man tried to chat her up. I almost felt pity. Almost. Instead, I took a seat within her line of sight and waited. It didn't take long for her to spot me. Her face drained of color, then turned a splotchy red, a mix of embarrassment and what I could only hope was regret. She gave the man a quick excuse and walked over to me, her heels clicking against the floor with each shaky step. Daniel, she started, her voice barely audible. She looked worn, almost fragile, as though these past months had hollowed her out. But I kept my face blank, my gaze unwavering. Rachel, I replied coolly, enjoying your night out. Her eyes darted away and she fidgeted with her empty glass. I I wanted to see you, to talk. I arched an eyebrow. Talk? You had your chance in court. You had many chances, Rachel. She swallowed, her face a mix of anger and pleading. You don't have to keep punishing me like this, Daniel. I made a mistake, I know that. But we don't have to keep hurting each other. I leaned back, studying her. She wanted mercy, forgiveness. She wanted a clean slate, and I wasn't about to give her any of it. Hurting each other? I scoffed. Rachel, you don't get it, do you? I've already moved on. You're the one still crawling back, begging for a scrap of the life you threw away. She flinched, her hands clutching her glass so tightly her knuckles turned white. I loved you, Daniel, and I still do. I wish you could just see that. Her words dripped with desperation, and I almost laughed. Instead, I decided to finish what I'd started. Love me? I leaned in, my voice dropping. The way you loved me when you were sneaking off to hotel rooms with him? The way you loved me while you were laughing about me behind my back? I watched the effect of each word as it landed, twisting the knife deeper with every syllable. Her face fell, her shoulders slumping, her bravado crumbling. Mark left me, she whispered, barely able to meet my gaze. He said it was too complicated. He wanted something else. A bitter satisfaction settled in my chest. So, in the end, he'd used her, discarded her, and moved on without a second thought. And now, here she was, crawling back to me, hoping I'd somehow save her from the wreckage she'd created. You really thought he'd stay? I asked, my tone dripping with mockery. You thought some sleazy affair would turn into a fairy tale? She bit her lip, the shame on her face so raw that it almost looked like regret. But I knew better. What do you want from me, Rachel? I asked, leaning back with a cold smile. Redemption? Closure? You're not going to find it here. She took a shaky breath. I thought we could find a way to move forward, to make things better. Better? I laughed, a hollow, humorless sound. Rachel, the best thing you can do for me is to disappear. Her face twisted with hurt, but she had no retort. She was broken, finally forced to confront the reality she had tried so hard to avoid. Without another word, I stood up, leaving her sitting alone, humiliated, in that dim bar. It was the last time I ever saw her. Over the next few months, I rebuilt myself piece by piece, in a way I hadn't done since the early days of our marriage. I traveled more, expanding the business overseas, putting distance between myself and the shadows of my past. And each night, I'd return home to the life I'd fought to keep, every detail a reminder of what I'd earned, of the justice I'd claimed. As for Rachel, word eventually got around that she had moved out of town, struggling to make ends meet. A part of me had wanted that, wanted her to live in that hollow shell, to experience firsthand the depth of betrayal's consequences. And now, as I stood on the other side, I finally felt that sense of satisfaction, the victory I'd craved. The injustice was over. Months turned into a year, and life settled into a rhythm that was all my own. I found new interests, buried myself in the business, traveled, and gradually reclaimed the sense of self I had lost in the mess of betrayal and revenge. Rachel was nothing more than a shadow in my past now, a mistake I'd finally let go of. But one night, while I was in the middle of a business trip in London, my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. Normally, I wouldn't have answered, but something about the time, 3 in the morning, London time, and the slight intuition that it could be work made me swipe to pick up. Hello? There was silence on the other end, followed by a faint, familiar voice. It's me, Daniel. Rachel. I nearly hung up on the spot. I hadn't heard from her since that night in the bar. She had been gone from my life entirely, but hearing her voice again, tired, fragile, pulled at a part of me I thought I had buried. "What do you want?" I asked, my tone clipped, cold. There was a pause, and then her voice broke, almost inaudible. I I didn't know who else to call. I sighed, glancing at the clock. I had meetings in the morning, and I had no patience for whatever this was. "Rachel, if you're calling me to rehash old mistakes, save it. I don't have anything left for you." "I know," she whispered, her voice thick with something deeper than regret, something I hadn't heard from her before. "It's not about that. Daniel, I'm sick." A chill went through me, a ripple of doubt and surprise. I didn't say anything, waiting for her to continue. "I have cancer, Daniel. It's bad. They say it's advanced." Her voice was strained, holding back tears. I didn't know who else to tell. Everyone I had, all the people I thought I had, they're gone. They've all disappeared, except you. Her words hung in the silence, heavy and brittle. I closed my eyes, letting the impact settle. She'd burned her bridges, destroyed her own life with her choices, and now, after everything, she was reaching back, looking for the one person who had once been there for her, who had loved her. "I'm sorry to hear that, Rachel," I said finally, keeping my voice steady and personal. "But what exactly do you want from me?" "I don't know," she said, her voice barely a whisper. I don't have anyone left. I don't even have the money for treatments. I lost everything in the divorce, and the rest I spent trying to stay afloat. I thought maybe, I thought maybe we could talk, like we used to." The irony struck me hard. She had given up our life together for a fleeting affair, tossed aside everything for a temporary thrill, and now she was reaching back into the past, hoping to find comfort in the man she'd left behind. She was asking for forgiveness, for help, for kindness she had never shown to me. "Rachel," I said slowly, each word deliberate, "whatever we had, it's dead. You killed it. And if you're hoping I'll somehow come back and save you now, then you haven't learned anything at all." There was a long silence on her end. I could hear her breath hitch, the sound of her struggling to contain her emotions. Part of me, the part that still held traces of who I had been, felt a pang of pity. But I knew better. Pity wouldn't change what she had done. Pity wouldn't undo the damage. "Please," she whispered, her voice trembling, broken. "I know I don't deserve it, but please, just a little help. Something to get me through this." I let the silence stretch, considering her plea, the raw vulnerability that I'd never heard from her before. And then, quietly, I said, "Rachel, if there's one thing I learned from all of this, it's that actions have consequences. You chose this. Now you have to live with it." And with that, I hung up. That was the last time I ever heard from her. Part of me wondered if she'd ever recovered, if she found someone else to help her. But I knew deep down that it didn't matter. Whatever path she'd taken, whatever ending her story found, it was hers alone. I had my life back. And finally, I had my freedom.